G'day and welcome to Kenty Blitz, your daily hit of NRL news. Kenty, we're on the back of a great win from New South Wales last night. What do you think?
Oh, look, I thought it was very strong. New South Wales were very impressive. Right from the outset, before the game, Laurie Daley, he was asked what did he want from his guys. He wanted them to start very physically. And New South Wales began at a level I think was higher with intensity than where Queensland started. Queensland, in some instances, probably overcooked it a little bit. I think Tino probably overcooked it a little bit, his start. But in other areas, I thought they were really lacking at the beginning. And then we saw this sort of early onslaught of penalties for New South Wales, and pretty much the die was cast from that point on.
Yeah. So New South Wales at half time were up 14-2, but could have been 20-2. Which indicates, I guess, how strong they were compared to Queensland in that first half.
Yeah, Warren, I obviously watched the game, and I picked up some things halfway through the first half, and then later after that, I was a bit disappointed with the Queensland performance. And now, obviously, everyone was. They got beat. They really got schooled in that first half.
From the opening kickoff, that first set.
The first set, New South Wales powered forward. Really, really strong set from New South Wales. Good kick at the end, and Queensland didn't come back quite as well. And Queensland just weren't matching New South Wales for intensity at the beginning of the game. But I think what a lot of people overlooked is New South Wales got out to a 6-0 penalty count in that first half. Now, 6-0, I had a look at the six agains. There was only six agains in the whole game, which were 4-2 to New South Wales. So how much that factored in, I don't know, because it doesn't tell you when they were ruled in the game. But to get a 6-0 penalty count in an Origin game is almost unheard of. And that gave New South Wales so much ball, so much ball in good field position, and just made Queensland tackle and tackle and tackle. And I dare say, I think Queensland had done so much tackling by 25, 30 minutes into the game. They were pretty much gassed. And at that point, New South Wales, they weren't slick, New South Wales. They were intense, but their attack wasn't humming along like you would expect later in the series. But they just had so much ball. Queensland just were unable to get into the game. And yeah, it's been overlooked. Everyone sort of looked at the other factors for why Queensland were down, but I just really think at first I was like, Queensland got massive problems here. They're going to have to really come up with something special for the game too. But then the more I looked at it, and I thought if they get a fair crack with the ball, it comes out something 50-50 in that first 25 minutes, 30 minutes in game two, then they're right in the contest. But I just don't think from that moment they were really allowed to play at their best because they'd just done so much tackling.
Growing up and watching Origin as a young kid, as a fan, and watching it for many years, it was almost like New South Wales had done a Queensland. Growing up, Queensland always had that early ascendancy, right? Yeah,
Queensland always got their starts right. They didn't last night. I don't know really why. Billy Slater spoke about that after the game. He was disappointed in just their energy and how they went about it. I'm not quite sure what went wrong for Queensland, but when you start getting penalties against you and it's all going one way, there was 15 penalties in the game, which is a lot for Origin. But to get a 6-0 penalty count against you to begin the game, it just has this compounding effect. And then eventually it begins to bite you also at the other end of the game where you've done so much hard work early, there's not much left in the tank to finish the game off. And I think you could use that as an excuse for why their attack really sort of failed to spark and why they looked a little bit lethargic. That said, though, they were disappointing. And in some ways they had themselves to blame. There's some really ill-disciplined acts there that cost them penalties. And they were just off their game, Queensland. And New South Wales, they got the start right and it won the game for them.
They clearly ran early at Harry Grant. That was obviously a tactic. Just come back. He's played one game, back from a month off footy. Clearly that's an idea to do that, right?
Yeah, look, and the interesting thing there is that his club coach, Craig Bellamy, was in the New South Wales box. Did Bellamy have an input into that? Perhaps. I'd say they probably didn't need it, to be fair. They know that Grant's come back from a hamstring injury. He's played one game. He's straight into Origin. He's the smallest player on the field, essentially, defending in the middle. It's just rugby league 101 that you direct your traffic at him, make him do the work. It dulls his, the fatigue then from tackling dulls his performance out of dummy half with the ball. And again, it has this compounding effect. It just took the sting out of him. It provided a real avenue, I think, for New South Wales to get up the field because they targeted him and they really went through the middle and really they were making a lot of metres, New South Wales. There was just like straight hit-ups. They were making 15 metres. And I think really, certainly towards the end of the game, really damaging for Queensland were they were the post-contact metres. So New South Wales were hitting the line and they weren't getting stopped in their tracks. They were then pushing on for another 3, 4, sometimes 5 metres with 3 or 4 defenders on them. Yeah. And Queensland were just unable to stop that roll and then got kicked to death by Mitch Moses and Nathan Cleary. So it was just a really good game plan from the Blues. It worked well for them and they got all the benefits early. I hate to bring the referees into it, but I just think that New South Wales clearly were more disciplined and played cleaner in that first half, and Queensland felt the effect of it.
You touched on Bellamy there. What do you think goes through his mind when he comes up against 3 of his top players? Harry Grant, Munster, and Xavier Coates, right? And he's with them in the trenches every day of the year, and then he comes up against them. Do you think he coaches for New South Wales against them, or do you think he stands back?
No, well, look, certainly when he coached New South Wales first time around and when he left that job, he conceded how difficult it was to coach against his club players because of his admiration and his like for them. Look, Laurie Daley has spoken about Bellamy's input into camp, and he said, look, he's not here to provide tactics for us. He's not doing all that sort of coaching. Yeah, okay. He's there basically looking at the coaches. Have you done this? Have you done that? And making sure that they're doing their jobs as best as possible. That could be a little bit of a neat way to package it. I do think if you've got Craig Bellamy there, you certainly bounce off some ideas and get his ideas on things. And the other thing too, I think Bellamy's really strong suit as far as his input into the camp is picking the right players. Laurie made a few mistakes last time he coached. He picked players on reputation, and he picked players, showed faith in players who didn't return the faith, and they ended up biting him. This time, I think...
You talking about the incident down at the pub where girls were drinking?
Look, he had Josh Dugan and who was the other one there? Was that
No, it was a winger. Blake Ferguson.
Blake Ferguson. Sorry. So Josh Dugan and Blake Ferguson snuck out and had a few beers. I think it was on the Monday before the game. Laurie probably should have got rid of them at the time. Privately, I think he knows he should have. Yep. This time around, he said he wouldn't make those mistakes. He hasn't made those mistakes. But what he's also done, look, the template was put there last year by Michael Maguire, who went out and picked players like Reece Robson, who surprised many, with Api Coruscant being so creative at dummy half. But the reason they picked Reece Robson was, while he's not as creative as Api Coruscant, he doesn't bend in defence. He doesn't bounce off in defence. He was mostly picked for that. And Maguire's theory was, well, I've already got creative players in the halves who are the best around. So I don't need a whole lot more creativity at dummy half because we got it at 6 and 7. And Laurie's ran with it this year. And I think he picked a really solid team. I've said this before in all my discussions. I remember I've sat down with Bob Fulton. I've spoken to Mal Meninga about it. I spoke to Wayne Bennett about it back 30 years ago when I was talking to Phil Gould about back then. Don't talk anymore.
Okay.
But
the good old days.
The good old days, yeah. But all of them basically say, look, 90% of the job of coaching successfully at Origin is picking the right team.
Yeah, okay.
And once you get the right team, you go through the series and you build on what you've got. If you get the team wrong, then you've got all sorts of questions about, okay, it didn't work. Who's the wrong player for the spot? And if you don't then get it right for game 2, you bug it. So Laurie got it right for game 1. There's a lot of talk about Queensland. What do they do for game 2? A lot of talk about, do they get rid of Daley Cherry Evans?
What do you think about that?
No, I don't think you get rid of him.
Okay.
Okay, it's an unusual thing because
Oldest player in the game to ever play Origin?
oldest player to ever play Origin.
Over the hill?
Well, that's going to be one of the arguments that Billy's going to have to address before game 2 because Laurie Daley hasn't been playing well. Club football. He's been going okay, but not really setting the world on fire the last few weeks. He started the season okay. Since the whole I'm leaving Manly drama, his form has gone off. Now, Billy's got to figure out for himself, does he sit there and say, okay, this is the best I can get now out of this man who's 37 years old, or does he just say, look, it was just an off night? And that's going to be a big decision to make. We're in uncharted territory here. No one's ever played Origin at the age that Daley Cherry Evans is at.
Yeah.
So is there a like a mythical line?
A used by date?
Yeah, like a used by date. Is there a period where you just cannot compete? I don't think so with Daley. I think he just felt the effect of just getting dominated through the middle. They were very lethargic in attack. And I spoke yesterday. I really expected big games out of Kalen Ponga and Cameron Munster.
Yeah, well, you say that because, I mean, Queensland are generally, known for picking players could be out of form and they come good for Origin.
That's the Queensland mystique, isn't it?
Yeah.
They often have picked players who are well out of form. And I remember Bob Lindner used to get picked for Queensland, and he used to, when he was playing at Parramatta and West and whatnot, he was in all sorts of club form, and then he'd go out and play a blind for Queensland. And just when everyone started to think, mate, is this guy really that good? He'd go out and play for the Maroons.
Well, they say that about Ben Hunt too, right? Ben Hunt's club form's not great, and I actually think they missed Ben Hunt last night.
In hindsight, yeah. But I would have found it hard to put him in the team. Like, I wouldn't have put him there in front of Harry Grant. I wouldn't have taken Dearden off the bench. So it's going to be a tough one. I don't know where Billy goes with it. Does he show faith? This is going to be his test. Does he show faith, pick the same squad or near to it, and go ahead with that?
Or does disappointed with Ponga?
Yeah, I was. But kind of.
And Munster?
Kind of. But if you looked at Queensland's attack, they never had any good shape. Now, so when I say shape's one of those funny words that people just nod and go, okay, but don't really know what it means. But when Queensland had the ball, shape is essentially players in the right position at the play of the ball to then run their plays. And Queensland, they were like Brown's cows. They never really got themselves set up, and they sort of their sets didn't have that continuity to it. So there was this lack of, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to get to the far post, then we're going to come back with this play, or we're going to hit the near post, and then we're going to put a play on, out wide. They never really got to that. All their footy, it was essentially just ad-lib footy. It was instinctive footy, but Ponga wasn't getting the ball in any kind of good field position or good position himself. Like, he was just not getting the ball with. There was no decoys around him. There was no movement around him with other players. So when he was getting the ball, it was basically like a game of backyard footy, throwing the ball. Let's see what he can do. Yeah, right. And he just like, it was a really out of sorts Queensland performance. But again, Warren, I could put all that back to how much work they did early in the game, that they were just probably out on their feet. Yeah, right. So, like, I don't quite know, without sort of sitting down, and I'm not going to pour over the video like the coaches will, but just 24 hours later, just sitting here and having a think about it and looking at different highlights and stuff, because there was a period there in the game where New South Wales had a set, and they were hitting 10, 15 metres each hit up. Good kick. Then Queensland got a set, and this is sort of late in the first half. And as they started to move the ball wide, so the ball's getting passed backward to go wide, as they were doing that, by the time the New South Wales defence had got up, New South Wales defence was actually going over the advantage line. Yeah, right. Out wide to knock them down. And so their line speed was tremendous. And I think that was a big part of how the game started as well. New South Wales' line speed was so good in defence, whereas Queensland's just wasn't quite up to it. And that's one thing I think they've really got to address in game 2. They've just got to get more speed through there, off the line to defend, to try and just shut down what New South Wales are doing, and win the tackle a bit more. They got beaten in the tackle all night. But again, you can point that all back to a 6-0 penalty count where they've just done so much heavy work at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, right.
They're running on heavy legs the rest of the game.
Yeah, well, they've never won in Perth.
Well, that's the issue for
And if
Queensland.
they're going to win the series, they need to go to Sydney.
Well,
and win in Perth, which they've never done before, and then win in Sydney.
So the stats are quite funny. So of the 41 series, 31 of the teams that have won game 1 have gone on to then win the series. Okay, so that's overwhelmingly now in New South Wales' favour. Also against Queensland, they've never won in Perth. Okay, and then last thing against Queensland is the third game is in Sydney. So what's in Queensland's favour? One skinny little stat that the last 2 times there was a game 1 in Queensland, 2019 and 2017, the team that won the game 1 then lost the next 2 games.
There you go. There you go. There's stats for everybody.
So Queenslanders, exactly. You can find your little bit of hope there.
Yeah,
that's your glimmer of saying,
Cling
well,
onto that.
it's not all over yet. But New South Wales, the big advantage for New South Wales going into game 2 is Laurie doesn't really have to do much except improve on what they did. He doesn't have to redo his team. He doesn't have to worry about anything. Our only injury now is going to stop those same players getting picked. Billy's got to figure out whether the loss of form of some of his key players is a concern that they need to be replaced. If so, who replaces them? Because that's another big question. Or does he rely on this famous Queensland spirit that we all hear about and say, boys, I'm going to pick you out of form. We're up against it. We need to go now perfectly. We need to win the next 2 from 2. And we're going to rely on you. We're going to trust in you. We're going to have all our faith in you. And it's up to you to do it and see if they can draw on whatever is in the water up there and come out and win the series. But Billy's that's a big decision for Billy. And to be fair to Billy, but as a rookie coach, as in not a club coach, and he's not at the coalface of coaching all the time, It's going to take a fair bit of soul searching, I think, to come up with the right solution.
I think Queensland's issue is their best players are in their spine. You Ponga, Munster, DC or Dearden and Harry Grant. So you kind of can't really change those players.
No. But look, they also had a pretty good middle. I thought Tino tried it. He busted a gut last night. He probably got a little bit over. Anxious early in the game, not anxious, over excited in the game. He really pushed the line, and he took it to New South Wales, and he was terrific. But he just didn't have enough support, and he really needed some support. Whereas Haas just, he answered in kind to Tino, but he had allies with him. He had other guys that he'd do number 1 hit up or number 2, and he had, Barnett was sensational. He's just an unsung hero, and he goes and does his job. He's tough, he's unforgiving, and he just complements Payne Haas so well. And so they really got in, and they just worked Queensland like that. So Queensland, I was surprised at how off they were to start the game. I don't know whether they're trying to deliberately bring it down to try and not get too emotional and probably overcooked that and got too far down. But they just weren't there. And
who won the coaching duel? I mean, we know
Billy.
Score, but
Laurie. Laurie. Yeah. Look, Laurie, I just think he had him pitch perfect. Emotionally they were at the right level. I thought Mitch Moses was sensational.
Okay.
He probably outshone Nathan Cleary, to be fair, as far as performance goes. And just the way that they operated, they weren't perfect, New South Wales. I expect them to get better, that the combinations will get better and that they'll just get a little bit more of a groove going in games 2 and 3. But it was a good team. I picked Queensland and win because I was trying to find... I thought Queensland would go down and find something, and being at home and that Queensland spirit that they talk about, I thought that would bring the best out of their key players, but it didn't. I give them an excuse though, is that the way the game started with that penalty count.
Yeah. It's interesting. On Fanatics TV Chimes, Steve Gillis, who's Laurie Daley's manager, interviewed him a little while ago, which is up there now if people want to look. And the composure of Laurie at that time, talking about Origin players, and he knew what it took, etc. You know, it seemed to be he had it all under control, which they should. But you know, you never really know how it's going to go, right?
Well, it's the biggest job in the state, so you hope he's got it right. But the difference between Laurie, and everybody's picked up on it, the difference between Laurie in this job and the last job is stark. You can see there's a difference there. There's a confidence there. He really went away, and Laurie's one of the great competitors, which people don't realise. Like, he's such a nice fella he's very much he's got the velvet glove with the steel fist. So, but he went away and he really thought about where he got it wrong and how he got it wrong, and he acknowledges all that within himself. He doesn't talk about it, but he acknowledges what he does. He's quite frank if you have a discussion with him about the mistakes he made. And he just vowed, I think he's just in a much clearer headspace this time, that I know this is what works and I know this is what I did wrong last time. So I'm going to do this that works. I'm not going to do what I did last time. I'm not going to be... he tried to have a little bit too much faith in his players, hoping that they would repay the faith. And I think he realises now some guys you can't. Yeah. And just, like I said, he took the template from Michael Maguire, and he didn't mess with it. He picked pretty much as close to that as he could, given what was available. And obviously had to bring Cleary back into the side, but he just didn't set a foot wrong.
Well, not many coaches get that second chance. So good on Laurie. Well done for taking that.
Just on that too, though, Warren. Like, everyone hops into Laurie over his last job, and he made some mistakes. But the other thing, he coached 5 series last time. He only won 1, and that looks pretty unimpressive. It's 9-6 against him, which looks not quite as bad. But he was playing against one of the all-time great Queensland sides, who had some of the greatest players that have ever played this game, and he was doing it within a side that really couldn't find a halfback. Yeah. Okay. The key player in the team, he could not find a half. New South Wales was just bereft. The 4 or 5 best halfbacks in the competition back then were all Queenslanders, and he did that. And yet he nearly stole a couple of those series. Like, he came close. He won 1, and there's 2 others there he could have with other poor decisions from referees or players at certain situations. Could have easily turned one of those games, which would have then tipped the series his way. So he wasn't that far away when he had no right really to be that close. This time, I think it's clear he's got the better team. So I'm really interested. I've said this before about Laurie earlier in this month. There's no doubt Laurie's going to look at this as a chance to internally say, you know what, I'm going to get a few back here on Queensland after all they put me through. And he won't admit it. He won't talk about all that sort of stuff. But knowing the man like I do, there'll be something inside him that will get a flicker of pride that he's inflicted some hurt back Queensland's way. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're returning to regular programming. We've got the games on the weekend. We'll get to that in a minute. I just want to ask you a couple of other things about what happened last night. The top sin bidding, what do you think of that?
I think that penalty, that rule is a rubbish rule.
Rubbish, isn't it?
Well, the problem is, the problem with that rule, and this is what the NRL have not come up with a solution for. If you get out jumped for a bomb to your corner, which Toto did last night against Coates, if you get out jumped and as you go up for the ball, the other wingers come over the top of you and you realise you've been out jumped, you realise he's going to come down and all he has to do is catch the ball and fall and hit the ground and it's a try. You can't. How can you stop the try? Yeah. Like, you can't wait till you hit the ground because they might hit the ground before you. Like,
The other thing is, Coates was falling on top of him. Yeah. So like, what does he do?
That's the other thing too. The other thing too. Does he just fall back with his arms open and get smashed himself on the ground? Like, there's just no way for you to be able to defend that if once you are out jumped, and it was a contest for the ball. If he went up to try and this rule was brought in because typically in rugby league, we always push things too far sometimes. Guys started flipping blokes around. So guys were jumping up and people coming in, hit them in the legs, and they were flipping them around, and the guys were coming around too hard, they were coming down on their heads, and potentially it could have ended up in all sorts of tragedy, okay? You hit the ground the wrong way, upside down, you break your neck, and it's all over. So they brought in that rule, but at the way it stands at the moment, it's undefendable. If you're out jumped, you cannot defend it. But to then put him in the sin bin for it,
Yeah.
oh, come on. Like, that was just, honestly, the game's got to go back and address it.
Well, the funny thing was, a couple of minutes later, there was a kick at the other end where the same thing happened. No penalty.
Yeah.
And I might have had a few to his news by that stage, but where I was, the whole pub was up in uproar.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And anyway, that's where it goes. But that's just one of those rules that have been brought in by people who don't understand the game, and it should be just eliminated, because you've got to be able to try and defend the try. If you've been out jumped, your next job, as soon as you realise you're out jumped up, even when you're still in the air, your job's to try and find a way to get your hand on the ball, get yourself between the catcher and the ground to try and stop him grounding the ball to score the try. Now, you can't wait till you hit the ground before you try to implement that. It's just ridiculous.
Peanut of the week, maybe a segment we should introduce.
We should have a few of those.
Mate, Eddie Farah.
Eddie Farah, the referee, Klein, picked it up straight away. He squirted water on the ball.
The New South Wales trainer, by the way, sorry.
New South Wales trainer. He said, do that again. He said, you'll be off. He should have been off straight away then.
Yeah.
Look, I don't mind gamesmanship, but I don't like trainers doing stuff like that. I don't think trainers should be even consider themselves to be part of the game.
Yeah.
Okay, they shouldn't be squirting water on the ball. I've seen there's other trainers, one club in particular, who loves to sit there and sledge the opposition players. And I sit there and think, mate, where are you getting off on this? Like, what can the opposition players actually? How can they square up? At least if you're a player and you're saying something to a player, you say, okay, well, mate, when you run the ball, I'm going to jam you and give you what for.
Yeah.
Trainers should be they should be. I think they're on the ground far too much anyway.
Yeah.
If you can't play 40 minutes of football without a drink of water, it's like I see guys. Yeah, I've done Olympic Games and Commonwealth Games. You see people run the marathon for 2.5 hours. You know what I mean? For 2.5 hours they're running, and like the marathon in Athens when I was there, it was about 42 degrees. Yet they went out. There was no heat rule where let's run half the marathon, sit down in the shade for 15 minutes, cool down, and then continue it. That's what you do. They're elite athletes these days. They don't need to be on there every 4 minutes getting water. They're essentially only on there delivering messages.
Yes.
Mate, and again, they're supposed to be professional athletes. They don't need the messages. Get them off the field.
Yep.
Only come in once tries have been scored. That's the only time they should be allowed to bring on water.
Yep.
Or there's an injured player, obviously, but that's specifically for the player, not the team.
Okay, something else put that on your list, Andrew Abdo, down the bottom.
Oh, I've got a list for you. Got a list.
We'll get that to you soon. Mate, a little bit of news out of the Roosters and Newcastle. Dom Young looks to be going there now.
Yeah, he's going to go there. They're releasing him. There's a bit of a caveat on it. That's not until after they've played later next month.
Round 14, I think. Yep.
Yeah, so they play next month. And after that game, then Dom Young's free to go back to Newcastle. That works out well. Look, they've clearly come to a deal.
Yeah.
And people get upset about these things, but there's a lot less angst in this one than there was in the Galvin situation.
I'm not sure if you heard that, but he's signed for the Bulldogs.
Really?
Yeah, today,
There you
officially.
go.
There you go. So well done.
Well,
anyway,
they waited for Origin and snuck that in.
Okay. Mate, let's have a quick talk about the games this weekend. Almost regular programming. We've got 3 off with a bye, but Dragons Knights tomorrow night.
Anything can happen. Look, I like. I see. Does Ponga play? Yeah,
I think he will.
Yeah, well, you'd hope he will. I still think the Dragons are going really. I like the Dragons in that at home.
Yep.
They're playing better football than people give them credit for. The Dragons.
Cogra Oval Friday night. Titans Storm.
Well, you just got to go to Storm there
Every time, right?
every time. Like, it's Titans, they're champions one week and mugs the next. Like, they're very hard to get a read on.
Question on Tino playing.
Well, obviously,
Titans
look, look, that's going to be a little rider we're going to have to put in every game. Who do their Origin players play? Every club has a different approach to it. Some leave it up to the players. Some have a rule that, no, we're going to stand you down for this game to try and just stop you getting fatigued and overstressed. So bear in mind, everything we say, we will assume
Asterisks.
that they're playing.
Okay. Cowboys, Tigers.
Cowboys at home, I think Cowboys at home. A couple of key players have just played those, so yeah.
Seagulls, Broncos.
Who turns up this week?
Yeah.
Do the real Seagulls turn up? Do the real Broncos turn up? Both teams have basically got to pull their fingers out and really sort of use this now. I think and they've got to start getting some consistency in their performance. Manly, they've just crashed through the floor.
I feel sorry for Manly fans. I mean, they're just most underwhelming team? You know, 1 week they're up, next week they're down.
Well, there's a lot of down lately. There's a little bit of internal rumblings about just players aren't quite happy about things now. There's 3 or 4 things that can be blamed on, but I don't think they're just a happy camp at the moment, Manly. They are upset with Cherry Evans. Some players are very upset that he's leaving.
Okay.
And I think it's just caused a little bit of a problem there. And the Broncos have really got to get going. So I expect to see the real Broncos, and that could go either way, but in the next month.
Yeah, okay. Rabbits Warriors.
Warriors, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Warriors, yeah. Even though they're going to be here, they've only had Mitch Barnett play. Souths have had, Latrell back out. He'll be backing up. But Warriors, look, we're all underestimating them, and they're just a good side, a really good side.
Yep. Panthers Eels.
That's a tough
Panthers
one.
got 4 players backing up. Eels
Yeah.
got Moses and Lomax.
Yeah.
I think that's probably it.
I like Penrith there, even though there's no real reason to tip them.
Yeah.
But Moses back for Parramatta is a big in because they're a completely different side with him in the team.
I think Panthers have to win. If they don't win, I mean, it's coming last, right?
I don't know. Look,
Anyway.
honestly, who thought Penrith would be coming last this time of year?
Mate, final game of the week, Roosters Raiders. Should be a good game, right? Both
That'll be a
teams are
ripper.
right on form.
Yeah, real ripper. I like this game. And I think you've got to go to the Raiders because we keep underestimating them as well. But it's going to be funny. I always like Ricky and Robbo around this time. They start eyeing each other like old gunfighters. So it's always a bit going on.
Very good, very good. Well, that's it for us this week. It's been a big week, Origin. A little bit exhausted, but got the weekend ahead for you, Kenty.
Got the weekend ahead. Let's get going, eh? So hopefully we get some good footy. I'm really looking forward to the footy this week and seeing how some players back up and I love the club footy, mate. I really do. This idea that they want to let's bring in Origin, get rid of club footy, please. It's a dumb idea. I don't like it. I don't want to rep round. I just think as difficult as it is, just keep kicking on with club footy because
you don't want to see Tonga Samoa on Sunday.
Don't get me don't get me in trouble there. Don't get me. It's not that. It's not that at all, mate. I just love the club footy. I got in trouble for once saying I didn't want to watch Tonga Samoa, but I also everyone blew up about me saying it. But I also said that the next sentence I didn't want to watch Australia and New Zealand either.
Yes,
it's not a slight on those two nations.
And back then they didn't have all the players that play for them now either. So
no, they don't. But I'm just not a fan of just out of nowhere throwing a rep round in the middle of the season.
Play those at the end of the year.
Yeah, look, historically Origin goes back because it was a trial to get picked for Australia. It grew into something bigger, but at least it's got some sort of like little seed where it began. The whites there. Rep round just to invent one, just to give everyone something to watch during the year when the Origin's on. It just doesn't work for me.
There you go. All right, guys. Thanks very much. Until next week.
Begin.
See you later. Bye bye.